The first time I stood outside the Orrington Playhouse, rain soaked the maroon awning until it sagged like a tired eyelid. Inside, the eclipsed curtain troupe rehearsed as if the fate of the city balanced on their choreography, which, I would soon learn, was almost literally true. Everyone in Larkspur had heard rumors. Their plays weren't just convincing, they were consequential. People claimed that after last season's tragedy, in which the protagonist's despair filled the auditorium like black smoke, a swath of downtown businesses had closed overnight. Owners struck by the same inexplicable sadness. I had come to investigate for the Larkspur Chronicle, expecting to write a tidy feature about local folklore. Instead, I discovered the mayor's office was purchasing large blocks of tickets, deciding who would sit where, and courting the troupe with grand promises. The implication was absurd, weaponizing drama to reshape politics. Yet the pattern was unmistakable. Each performance coincided with sudden policy shifts that met little resistance. A rezoning proposal slipped through city council after Voices in the Fog, a play that left audiences practically chanting the need for change. The mayor's primary opponent withdrew the day after The Lonely Crown, a historical epic pulsing with anxiety about royal usurpers. 2 weeks into my research, I secured an interview with the troupe's director, Dara Finch, a gaunt woman with coal-smudged cheekbones who wore fingerless gloves even in July. She ushered me backstage, where set pieces waited in half-lit melancholy. Artificial trees leaned ominously, as though the forest itself were eavesdropping. "Everyone asks whether we're cursed," she said, not waiting for my question. "But curses imply we want this. We don't." She moved a chess piece on a prop table. "We're trapped in a playwright's promise made years ago. Emotion bends reality if the story is strong enough and the audience is open enough. Our founder, Sylvia Malaro, called it the resonance. It's beyond our control." "Then why keep performing?" I asked. She laughed, a hollow, stage-trained chuckle. "Because if we stop, the curse snaps back like a slingshot. You'll get chaos without the benefit of choreography." Chaos with choreography seemed bad enough, I thought. "Mayor Caldwell treats the playhouse like his personal spellbook," Dara continued. "He packs the crowd with loyalists, prescribes their moods in advance. He thinks he can sculpt the city." She searched my face. "Do you think you can write this? Do you think people will believe it?" I countered. Dara gave no answer. She gestured to the wings, where actors were warming up, humming like beehives. "Stay for tonight's rehearsal," she offered. "Feel what it's like before ink touches newsprint." I agreed. The house lights dimmed, stage lights flared, and for 2 hours I was pinned to my seat. The play was still nameless, stitched from multiple drafts, but its emotional spine was panic. Panic smoothed into patriotism, then pushed into messianic certainty. My pulse raced not because of any clever plot twist, but because the actor's fear seeped into me, thick and metallic. After the final blackout, I stumbled outside and discovered Larkspur's skyline had shifted. A new tower now rose beside City Hall, glassy and ominous, lit from within, even though zoning boards had rejected its construction only a month ago. That was the night I accepted Dara's premise. Emotion plus narrative equaled reality. The next morning, I confronted Mayor Caldwell during a press conference meant to trumpet the tower's miraculous appearance. He wore a sunrise orange tie and the smile of a man who believes fortune is inevitable. "Mayor, can you explain the sudden arrival of a building that didn't exist yesterday?" I asked, voice steady enough, recorder raised like a shield. Caldwell's eyes flickered. "The Emery Tower has been in planning for years," he said smoothly. "Perhaps you simply didn't notice its progress. Gaslighting 101. He pivoted to the next reporter. I lingered afterward, following him through a side corridor to his limousine. "You're hijacking the eclipsed curtain," I accused. He paused, hand on the door handle. "I'm cultivating civic unity," he replied. "Stories drive societies. I simply ensure the right stories reach the right ears." He leaned closer. "Celia, imagine directing that power toward prosperity. A leaner bureaucracy, a safer city. But it requires participation. You could help." "I'm a journalist." "Even better," he whispered. "Nothing spreads emotion like newsprint." I watched the limo glide away, leaving exhaust that smelled faintly of eucalyptus. some new environmental tweak he'd probably woven into existence. For the next week, I researched feverishly, cross-referencing performance dates with municipal actions, interviewing ex-council members who couldn't explain why they had reversed long-held positions. My editor, Claire, tolerated my overtime, but balked at publishing allegations that smacked of a cult conspiracy. "Give me evidence that would stand up in the court," she insisted, "not just déjà vu and headaches." Evidence. The word felt brittle in my mouth. On Friday night, Dara summoned me again. "We're debuting the new piece tomorrow," she said. "Caldwell commanded it. He's comped half the seats for his supporters. He wants them euphoric. If he succeeds, the residents will overwrite the next election. Ballots will count themselves in his favor before anyone touches a pen." "What can I do?" I asked. "Counter-programming," she answered. "We fill the remaining seats with people feeling something else. Doubt, perhaps. Regret. The curse responds to majority emotion. We tip the scale, undermine the mayor." "Isn't that just another form of manipulation?" "Maybe," Dara admitted. "But one aims for tyranny. The other aims for equilibrium." She placed a hand on my shoulder, eyes sunken and urgent. "Will you help?" I thought of the skyline bending like wet paint, of memory turning unreliable. "Yes," I said. We had 24 hours. I called Claire, confessed everything. To my surprise, she offered the Chronicle's subscriber list. "Run a flash edition," she said. "Offer free tickets, but only to readers we trust won't cheer for Caldwell." We crafted an article. "City's future on stage tonight. Your feelings may decide," framing it as an immersive civic experiment. It was vague enough to avoid libel, provocative enough to fill seats. That night, volunteers delivered broadsheets door to door. Social media flared. Caldwell's camp dismissed it as theater criticism gone mad. Yet curiosity worked in our favor. By showtime, a line wrapped around the block, 2 tribes sharing umbrellas, Caldwell's devotees buzzing with triumph, and our recruits brittle with skepticism. Inside, ushers guided patrons per a seating chart drawn by Dara. Caldwell's supporters clustered center orchestra. Doubters were scattered deliberately, a peppering of antibodies. I took a seat in the balcony, pen shaking. The play was called The Pact of Many Mirrors. Its plot: a beloved chancellor binds the hearts of citizens to his own, promising security in return for devotion. The parallels were blunt. Actors glided across the stage in reflective capes, catching footlights and throwing shards of brilliance across the audience. Music pulsed, a heartbeat magnified. From the first monologue, I felt the push. Joy, pride, deliverance, an emotional algorithm targeting every fear we'd nursed since childhood. Caldwell's faction sighed in collective pleasure. The house temperature seemed to rise as if happiness generated heat. Somewhere below, though, contrary feelings simmered. Unease, skepticism, grief for freedom slipping away. I clung to those tremors like footholds on a cliff. Halfway through Act 2, the air thickened. Stage fog bled into the aisles, though technicians swore afterward no machine produced it. The proscenium arch stretched, widening like a grin. I saw glimpses of a future city shimmering behind the set. Banners with Caldwell's face, police drones humming over neat rows of identical housing complexes. The audience gasped, but their interpretations diverged. Some saw utopia, others dystopia. I scribbled feverishly, words as anchors to reality. Then came the mirror oath, a famed soliloquy in which the chancellor asks the audience to recite a pledge. Caldwell's supporters stood, hands over hearts, repeating every line with evangelical zeal. Doubters remained seated, but their silence didn't break the spell. If anything, it sharpened it, carving fractures into the narrative space. Light flickered, strobes alternating gold and violet. I felt a tug behind my sternum, as if someone were unspooling my intentions. All around me, audience members struggled. A cheer collapsed into a sob. A fist pump became a trembling open hand. The resonance was pulling emotion like taffy, blending it until no one could remember what they believed. On stage, the lead actor, Jonas Wren, wavered. His eyes darted backstage, searching for Dara. Then, with a resolve that seemed to rip him in two, he changed a single word of the script. Instead of bind, he said question. The effect was immediate. The choral music hiccuped, lights popped. The pledge collapsed into murmurs. Audience emotion scrambled, forced to improvise. Caldwell's loyalists looked confused, betrayed by the plot they thought they'd purchased. Dissenters inhaled, a collective gasp of unexpected power. Reality reacted like a wounded animal. The illusory skyline beyond the set cracked apart, shards falling upward like reverse rain. For an instant, I saw Orrington Playhouse floating in a void, tethered only by whatever story we agreed to next. Caldwell himself stood up in the central row. "Continue!" he shouted toward the stage, voice booming with mayoral authority. "Honor the script." But the spell was already unraveling. Jonas advanced to the footlights, tears cutting rivers through his stage makeup. "Art chooses," he said into the hush. "Not the mayor, not the troupe, the audience." He turned, beckoned us. "Choose." I rose to my feet. So did Claire, somewhere on the opposite side. People overcame the paralysis of spectacle and looked inward for the emotion they wished to declare. Some chose hope laced with caution. Others chose anger at manipulation. A few clung to Caldwell's promise, but they were suddenly fewer, their certainty drained. Sound returned gradually. Whispers, confessions, a low hum of overlapping feelings. No single chord dominant. The stage lights steadied to neutral white. In that equilibrium, the resonance had no directive, no algorithm. Reality reverted. The premature tower outside dissolved like sugar in tea. Banners peeled from invisible walls. I felt the tug in my chest release, leaving only my own heartbeat. Caldwell rushed the stage, veins bulging. "You've doomed us to chaos," he barked at Dara, who had emerged from the wings with sheet music wilting in her grip. She answered quietly, "We've given us choice. Chaos is a risk we take for freedom." Security escorted the mayor out to scattered applause and louder silence. The curtain fell without bows. House lights stayed dim, perhaps to spare us the awkwardness of existing again. Backstage, actors wept in exhaustion. Jonas apologized to Dara for deviating, but she hugged him fiercely. "That deviation might have saved us," she said. I walked the aisles, interviewing shell-shocked patrons. Some claimed they remembered alternate streets that no longer existed. A retiree swore she had worn a campaign button that vanished from her lapel. 2 teenagers argued whether Caldwell had always been mayor or had only just become one last month. "Will the curse strike again?" I asked Dara later, recorder between us. "It never stops," she said, eyes hollow but bright. "But now people know. That makes it harder to abuse." She looked beyond me to the empty stage. "We'll keep performing. We have to. But maybe next time the audience walks in, aware that emotion is power, not currency for politicians." Outside, dawn painted the east with timid lavender. The Emery Tower was gone, replaced by a parking lot crater. Traffic lights blinked like newly hatched birds. I phoned Claire. "We have a story," I said. "I'm not sure we have words," she replied, voice trembling with either fatigue or triumph. We ran the piece under the headline, "City Stage Fractures Spell. Mayor's Reality, Rewrite Fails." Reader reactions ranged from disbelief to déjà vu. Caldwell attempted damage control, but every press conference ended in heckles about stage manage policy. Within a month, he resigned, citing health concerns, though rumor said no mirror in his house would reflect him the same way twice. A special election followed. Candidates debated infrastructure, taxes, but also which emotions they wished to inspire. A newfound transparency. Some even held open rehearsals of town hall dramatizations, inviting voters to witness the tug between feeling and fact. As for the eclipsed curtain, they instituted radical reforms: free admission, randomized seating, post-show forums where actors and audience processed the evening's impact together. Dara called it emotional literacy training. Attendance grew. People came not to be transported, but to examine the engines of transport. I attended every premiere, notebook in hand. Occasionally a prop would shimmer too vividly, or a line delivery would make the theater walls pulse outward. Always we talked afterward, grounding the magic. The curse, domesticated by discourse, became less of a threat and more of a reminder. One rainy evening, months later, Dara confessed the curse's origin in fuller detail. Sylvia Malero had once loved a politician who begged for a play that would guarantee his ascent. She wrote Crown of Echoes, infused with her heartbreak and genius. Opening night, voters swooned. The next morning, Sylvia dissolved into thin air, while the politician enjoyed a landslide victory. The troupe discovered her handwritten addendum only later. Beware, for the play obeys the heart of its beholders. Sylvia became the residents' first sacrifice, Dara said. We honor her by resisting every demand that turns art into a cudgel. I asked if the troupe would ever attempt a production free of emotional manipulation. She smiled sadly. There is no such play. The stage is a mirror. You can't stand before it without seeing your own pulse. Walking home, I passed the empty space where Emery Tower had briefly existed. Wildflowers broke through cracked asphalt, careless of zoning. I realized the city had entered a fragile adolescence, aware now of its ability to reinvent itself, but cautious about who held the pen. At the Chronicle, we instituted new editorial guidelines. Every political story required a sidebar analyzing emotional framing. The policy drew scoffs from traditionalists, but circulation soared. Readers wanted not just facts, but maps of how those facts tried to touch their feelings. It was not a shield, but a flashlight. One afternoon, a letter arrived from Caldwell, postmarked from a coastal retreat no one could locate on any map. It read only, "Stories never end, they migrate, guard the next stage." We framed it on the newsroom wall as both warning and motivator. Theater seasons rolled forward. Sometimes plays flared with dangerous intensity, requiring emergency talkbacks until reality calmed. Sometimes they fizzled, doing nothing but entertain. Either way, Larkspur lived in honest terror and wonder of its playhouse. Tourists visited not for the skyline, which was now modest and stable, but for the chance to feel themselves reshape the world, even if only a little, by sitting in the dark among strangers. On the anniversary of the Pact of Many Mirrors, Dara programmed a revival, promising no political subtext. Still, I entered wary. As lights fell, the hush felt electric. But this time, the narrative asked a different question. What if we share our fears aloud so they cannot be used in secret? The cast stepped off the stage, moving through aisles, collecting whispered confessions in glass jars that glowed faintly with colored light. On stage, they arranged the jars into a mosaic. Fear transformed into pattern, vulnerability displayed as art that could not be weaponized because it was no longer clandestine. When the curtain closed, nothing outside had changed, no buildings risen, no streets erased. And yet something monumental had shifted within us. We had watched our own trepidations illuminated, then returned to us as communal fabric. The city felt sturdier, stitched by candor. Afterward, I lingered while workers swept the aisles. Dara stopped beside me. "The curse is teaching us," she said. "Reality bends to emotion. So cultivate emotions you're willing to live inside." Walking home, I composed a final paragraph for my ongoing chronicle. Perhaps the line between stage and city was always thin, even before magic declared it porous. Democracy itself is theater, performances of policy, rituals of persuasion. The difference now is we sit in the audience aware of our power, hearts cued not by a mayor's command, but by our shared vigilance. The play continues, curtain never fully down, and every ticket stub is a ballot we cast with feeling as much as thought. Some nights I dream of towers again, or of Sylvia Malero whispering new scripts into the wind. I wake unsettled but determined, because tomorrow another story will open. Someone will try to sell tickets, and it will be up to us to decide whether we watch passively or rewrite the lines as they reach our ears. The orchestra of civic life tunes eternally. We listen closely now, ready to applaud, ready to object, knowing that whichever emotion we choose, to hope, to doubt, to love, will bleed from seat to street, rewriting the city one heartbeat at a time.